I've owned many Keurig K-Cup coffee makers over the years and many of the off brands. I've used them all and I know what I like and what I dislike about them. What I don't like is that they don't make coffee nearly as good as traditional stovetop mocha, French press, pour over coffee. All of the traditional methods make better coffee. But the convenience factor of the Keurig is really what gets me using it at 5 o'clock in the morning when I'm holding a baby. Most people want the Keurig simply for the convenience factor, but that doesn't mean that they have to sacrifice flavor. Now, you're not ever going to get the same quality of flavor out of a Keurig machine than you are in any other method. However, there are a number of common mistakes that almost everybody makes everywhere, all the time. And I refuse to make those mistakes because even though I can't get the best tasting coffee from my Keurig, I'm going to get the best I possibly can. Let's go over all of the most common mistakes that people make when they're using their Keurig. That way you don't have to make those mistakes going forward. In my opinion, there are 7 main mistakes that people make when brewing K-Cup coffee. The first one has to do with the needle. When you put a cup in there, you don't just drop it in and close the door. The reason for this is because the K-Cup is sitting crooked. And when you go to push the door closed, the door is coming down on an angle. Now this is going to slightly differ depending on the machine you use, but when you do that, you're putting a lot of extra pressure on this lever because the needle has to poke the top and the bottom of the K-Cup, and it has to straighten the K-Cup out, which means that the hole that's punched on the top sometimes gets a groove in it, and the needle doesn't seal the whole hole. That way, once it brews, some of the water escapes out of the top, bringing extra grime and grit into your coffee and changing the way that the flavor extracts. The second most common mistake people make is they take their coffee mug, fill it up with water, and then they pour it into the reservoir without any knowledge of how much water they're putting in. Each one of these K-Cups, it doesn't matter which kind of K-Cup or which brand you use, they all have about 11 grams of coffee grind in them. 11 grams of coffee grind is the appropriate amount for a 6-ounce cup of coffee. If you have an 8 or a 10-ounce mug and you use that much water, then you are getting coffee that is watered down. It's weak. The last little bits of flavors that extract from the grind are the less desirable flavors. What I recommend that you do is either get yourself a smaller coffee mug or measure out how much water you're putting in. Only put 6 ounces in, maybe 7 if you like your coffee a little bit weaker, but don't go up to 8, 9, and 10 ounces because your coffee is just not going to taste as good. The third main problem that I see almost everybody doing with their coffee is they rely so much on the convenience and the speed of K-Cup machines that they fail to realize that some of the machines have a strong button on them. Some people have a machine that doesn't have a strong button on them. It is worth using a machine that has a strong button. This is my Keurig K-Mini Plus. It's got the strong feature. The regular K-Mini doesn't. There are other knockoff brands that have a strong setting as well. What the strong setting does is it slows the flow of water through the machine into your cup. Usually it's about 30 extra seconds of brew time. Just imagine the flow of water goes into your coffee cup a little bit slower. It's the same amount of water, it just takes more time to do it. The heating up time is about the same, but the flow slows down. That allows for a more even, consistent flavor extraction from the limited amount of coffee grinds that are inside your K-Cup. The fourth main mistake that almost everybody makes is that they brew their coffee with tap water. That can work for some people. I'm on a well. My water is clean and pure and it tastes great, but lots of tap water around the country just doesn't taste very good. There are things and additives put into it. Some taps consist of hard water full of minerals and other things that alter the flavor. Everybody's been there before. You taste your tap water, you get used to it. You go visit the in-laws and taste their tap water, it tastes completely different. With coffee, the main ingredient is water. Almost everything in your cup consists of water. If your water doesn't taste perfect, then it will alter the flavor of your coffee. I recommend, for the best flavor, to actually use filtered water or bottled water. Yeah, it's an extra expense, but you can taste the difference, especially if your tap water doesn't taste all that great. A side benefit of using bottled water is it's a lot easier to measure how much water you're putting into the reservoir. The fifth most common mistake people make with Keurig and K-Cup coffee makers is that they don't rinse the machine out after you brew a cup. We rinse everything else out. You're not gonna eat dinner on a dinner plate, stick it back in the cabinet, and then use it again tomorrow. You have to rinse these things out. Coffee, debris, and liquids, they dry and they leave residue. Grind gets stuck up into the needle. Coffee oils slowly accumulate over time. After you brew a cup of coffee, if you just take the coffee mug, throw the pot away, and walk away, if you come back later in the day, let's say like 6-7 hours later, and open the whole thing up and just rub your fingers around in all of the safe places, you're gonna find old coffee on your finger. Like, it's gross. And those coffee oils can go rancid over time. If you don't rinse the machine out, that will slowly accumulate and start altering the flavor of the cups that you do produce, and they will slowly accumulate in the needle and the passageways that water travels, changing the way that the machine works. Basically, you run the risk of clogging your machine if you don't rinse this thing out. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but over time it will. So make sure to rinse it out. That will also make your deep cleaning sessions a lot easier down the road. The sixth main mistake is similar to the last one. Every now and then, once every week or two, I pull out the jug of white vinegar and I will do a full vinegar run, because the vinegar run, things still do get in there, and vinegar does act as a disinfectant. You don't want old water in the tubing slowly breeding bacteria. Throw some vinegar in there, run a cycle every week or two. Doesn't cost very much, and it will make your coffee machine work better for longer and make coffee that tastes better. Hey, I gotta interrupt the video here just for 1 second. If you're watching this, and that means that you're a good ways into this video, and I thank you for watching this far. I hope it's very helpful for you. If it is, please hit that like button. These videos do take time and energy to produce. I do want to give you the best information I possibly can. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. I've got lots of things coming down the pipeline. I hope you follow along, subscribe. Thanks. Now let's get to the last mistake. The seventh main mistake that almost everybody makes. Every now and then when we're at the grocery store, we feel adventurous and we feel like we've got all the money in the world and we'll go and spend the money on fancy K-Cups. But here's the deal. You can't buy the cheap generic bulk price K-Cups. You just shouldn't. This is an example of a cheap one. This whole thing came in a box of like 80, and the plastic is terrible. When you put this in the machine, this whole thing probably costs about 30 cents if you break the package down by K-Cup price. That is really cheap and certainly is attractive. It makes sense to want to spend a smaller amount on your K-Cups, but these generic cups just don't taste good. When you brew a cup with this, you can taste the plastic in your coffee. Now, not everyone is going to be like that, but lots of them are. It's a lower quality plastic. The coffee grind on the inside is nowhere near as good as the coffee grind that's inside a more premium brand. Now, you don't even have to go and spend $1.50 per K-Cup. There are really specialty coffee makers out there making boutique K-Cups. You don't have to go that extreme to get good coffee. This, for instance, is a Boyd's coffee. It doesn't even have the plastic. It comes in this nice little bag, and eventually it'll go stale if I just let it sit on the counter for weeks on end. But it's gonna be good enough. It's a K-Cup after all. The actual coffee grind that's inside these and other specialty coffee makers, fancy brands that you might buy online that your grocery store doesn't offer, the coffee inside is going to be fresher, it's usually going to be better, it's going to be packaged in a way that less oxidation has happened. The coffee in these, who knows how old it is. It's certainly stale. If you've ever opened one up before, like literally just cut the plastic off and opened it up and tapped out the coffee, like it is old grind. Again, your mileage may vary. You might have a really great supplier of cheap generic K-Cups, but it pays off in the actual taste of your coffee to spend a little bit more on something that is just a better product. Down below in the description, I don't like overspending money on things. I certainly don't like overspending money on K-Cups because, again, it's not the best form of coffee possible. But there are a handful of nice companies that make good coffee and they put it inside K-Cups for a reasonable price. Usually you are buying in bulk, so the price tag is a little bit more, but the per cup price is definitely going to be more than 30 cents a piece, but you don't have to overspend and spend like $1 to $1.50 each. Take a look at a few of those links for products that I buy myself, and please, again, hit that subscribe button because I got more videos like this coming down the road. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.